out, they was just leaving. Can't be nobody else, I'ma be myself. So they gon' have to watch me treat myself. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good.
Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests. I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. How are you doing on this lovely Friday Peace Talks? Ooh, mercy me. I'm looking forward to it. Anti-corporatists driving to the campground. Be on in a few. Oh, I'm jealous. That's awesome. I hope you got the wife with you. If she's listening tonight, hello there, ma'am. You are a frequent accidental guest on the show. We love talking about how we're all doing, and we know the side characters in our lives as the show goes. On a related note, Zoe is a good girl, and hello to all the coworkers who you're going to tell about the show. One hopes in future days to come. Oh my gosh. Here's Friday Peace Talks if you're not familiar. I lay down a couple of pieces I think we should look at, and we ask the audience for those things that we think folks should see. And then we talk about it together. So if, ooh, boy, we got a lot ready to rock. Excellent. So if you're not already familiar, I'm going to drop the link right now in the chat. Oh, that's not it. I'm going to drop the link shortly in the chat. Hey, there we go. And if you want to submit your piece for us to look at, well, you can use this right now. And the message is pinned. All right. Well, starting it off, I would very much like to take a whack at something I saw on MSNBC regarding the just comply talking point from the GOP that we were hearing so often when it was a matter of shooting Americans in the back as they fled from police, which one may argue they had a right to be fearful of given the context. It really doesn't seem to be such a popular talking point anymore, and one might suggest, and that one is me, that it's because complying with the police currently means that Trump should have complied, and Trump's aides should have complied. And I think it's indicative of a larger problem, which is that we simply take a lot of Republican talking points at face value, and I think while we have to address them as they are stated, taking them one at a time, we have to remember they're not given, honestly. They're given because they address the political goals of the day. And if you are a Republican voter, I would suggest to you that you should, well, heck, you should get a little woke. You should wake up to the fact that the people you've been supporting haven't been honest with you. If you're a Republican voter, I'm also going to assume that you don't watch a whole lot of MSNBC. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm probably going to say the same thing I just said, but I'll record it this time. So kicking off Friday Peace Talks, I'd like to watch a little MSNBC. I'm hoping we got a couple of Republican voters here. If not, I'm hoping we can draw some in for the VOD later. And I'd like your honest opinion on this. I'm betting you don't watch a whole lot of MSNBC. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I want to know. If I'm wrong, I'd like you to point out how I'm wrong, because I pretty much agree with everything Ari Melber says in this piece. It is about the double standard with just complying with law enforcement. And it would seem that the folks who were telling Americans, regular Americans, non-famous until they're murdered Americans, to just comply with police, suddenly don't have that philosophy anymore, almost as though it was never really a principle of theirs. They suddenly don't have that philosophy when it comes down to Trump complying with police. If I'm wrong, I want to know, so point out to me how. And I'll give you a huge, huge piece of power here, in that I'm going to adopt the side of Ari Melber. I think he's right. So if Ari Melber's wrong, you tell me how, and I'll have an honest look at it. Here's the piece on MSNBC that I'm talking about.
We live in a social compact where we elect officials to make the laws. Then we expect the FBI and police to enforce those laws. That law enforcement is the first contact between those government rules made for the rest of us to live by and the citizens subject to them. Now, when you think about it, that's naturally where the actual real fairness and equality of the system will be tested. Does it exist or not? In the modern era, Republicans have long claimed to be the law and order party. Bet you've heard that one before. And when these types of issues have been tested along the lines of race and power, with the reports that police abuse force and do other things in a discriminatory way, you may recall many top Republicans stress that the
Apologies. Hello, Rextrek, and hello, Wicked Foxy Dragon. Sorry, my mic was off there. But good to see you. Apologies for interrupting. Hope I wasn't smiling at an inappropriate time. All right, there we go.
issues require compliance, that people must immediately comply with law enforcement. During the recent BLM protests, conservatives and Trump allies were very quick to publicly lecture Americans, which by implication meant often black and brown Americans, that when law enforcement asks you to do something, really anything, you must immediately just comply.
If, in fact, a police officer gives you a command, please exit the car, you should say, yes, officer, no, officer, okay, officer.
I wish he would have complied a whole lot earlier.
Bad decisions by a cop, but if those decisions wouldn't have been made if the perp didn't run away.
Just comply, please. Listen.
Just comply. Now, Sean Hannity says obey the commands immediately. That's the exact standard failed by Trump aides who refuse to obey lawful commands, for example, that they simply show up and testify. You saw there the demands that people comply in seconds or minutes. Well, Steve Bannon had weeks to comply with a subpoena and he failed. He's since actually been convicted related to that. Peter Navarro now awaiting trial for the same thing. Both Trump vets' defiance followed the boss. Trump has failed that Hannity standard and defied compliance in many cases. The DOJ case that got him indicted features this timeline we've shown you of months where Trump didn't.
All right, if we have anybody who leans right in the live stream, one hopes, or the VOD later, I imagine by now you're already disagreeing. I imagine right now you're already saying, but what? I mean, I think the only real difference here in how they view it is how formal the disagreement or the lack of cooperation is presented. I think in one case it takes the form of somebody physically running away, whereas in the other case somebody writes a letter saying I am not participating in this. But they're both just saying I'm not participating in this. They're both just saying whatever's going on here, I don't care if you're a law enforcement, if your job is law enforcement, I won't have anything to do with this process. I don't submit to it. But as always, that's just going to, and if it's a straw man, tell me. But I think, this is my impression of what you guys on the right think. So it's what I have to go off of, and it's what I'm going to try to address. And if I'm wrong, again, please tell me. That argument, which is the core of what I end up hearing from right-wingers, that argument just comes down to aesthetics. It's how it looks. But the principle of the thing is exactly the same. And I would ask you, if you're the sort of person that thought that these people who got gunned down by police were the ones in the wrong because they ran away, they refused to comply, didn't endanger anybody, just ran away, tried to anyway, before being shot, and in most cases killed. Were you also the sort of person who was saying that Trump had a different standard of justice applied to him? And when you said that, did you think that his was harsher? Was that what you meant? Because here we see, yeah, there was a different standard of justice, but as always, it's a Trump lie. There's a kernel of the truth, but then they try to get you to believe the exact opposite of what's really happening. There is two standards of justice, and Donald Trump gets preferential treatment. Why? Because he's rich and he's famous, and you're not, which means you're the sort of person that gets shot in the back, and Trump's the sort of person, and Trump's lackeys are the sort of people who can defy law enforcement and have little to no consequences, the gentlest of consequences.
Not comply. Then his team lied about returning material, and there were more months refusing to comply. That is evidence from the indictment, while in his own way, Trump has confessed to some of it.
I have the right to take stuff. I have the right to look at stuff.
The list of what they took was kind of also vague and meaningless.
So here we are. Donald Trump's many admissions about this include his stated belief that he has the right to keep stuff against a subpoena. That is false. Now, like any defendant, he's legally presumed innocent on these charges, and they'll be processed. But legally, no person can just defy a subpoena without cause or a court challenge. And just to be clear, I try to be as direct as possible. If what he said were true, if people could just ignore subpoenas, then, well, subpoenas would be meaningless. And because subpoenas are the first way we get information to try to adjudicate conflicts, if that system fell apart, you wouldn't have any fact-finding or court system that worked. And that is why the DOJ's timeline against Trump is so damning. Now, the espionage charges in the Trump case are obviously serious crimes. They impact national security. But if we use that Hannity standard for immediate compliance and apply it to, well, what he did, he was talking about interactions over, first of all, smaller issues, smaller accusations, things that grew out of like traffic stops sometimes. And two, his just comply standard was supposed to be applied in minutes, not the months that Trump got in deference from the Justice Department. And there were right-wing lectures. You probably remember them. even when an unarmed man ran from police after a traffic stop and the officer shot him in the back and killed him. That was the consequence for Walter Scott there. And people said, well, he shouldn't have run. He should have complied. His punishment was immediate extralegal execution. The officer you see on the right there was ultimately given a 20-year prison sentence. Or remember Jacob Blake? He walked away from police. And so you had headlines like this: police shoot him in the back. Now, he effectively did not comply for 2 minutes, and police opened fire. And in that story, you may recall, they shot him 7 times in the back, paralyzing him. That was August 2020. It made national news. And when some Republicans were asked to respond, they went back to just comply, which was a way of sort of justifying that use of force. The idea that maybe the incident was on him for not complying or yielding.
Just on a side note, I'm going to hold up that tragic image for a second. You know, I understand why news outlets often say, like, black man shot by cop, or black man shot by white police officer. And they mean to highlight the injustice, and it comes from a good place, and I think it's probably a good practice. I just want to stress, you're the sort of person that hears that and thinks, oh, they're offended because it was a black person that got shot, that got gunned down by a police officer. You know what? You're partially right. You're partially correct. Your reasoning is wrong. Or rather, the further assumptions you're going to make from that are wrong. It's not because folks in the media think black folks are more deserving of life than white folks. It's not that at all. It's that folks in the media see hundreds and hundreds of these stories. And there's an obvious pattern. And you must know that. Black folks aren't the only ones who are gunned down needlessly by an over-militarized, well-put Rex Trek, it shouldn't be militarized at all, by a militarized police force. But they are shot far more, and they are clearly targeted, literally targeted, by police. They are allowed to be treated more brutally. And the thing is, if you just thought about them as Americans, really the only thing that matters in this context, really, the only thing that should matter to you, they're your fellow citizen. I'm not even asking you to like them. Maybe that guy who's wearing a tank top and shorts, maybe you wouldn't like him for that alone, because of the clothes he's wearing. Maybe that's enough to make you think, I don't like this guy. I'm not asking you to like him. I'm asking you to decide if he was doing something worthy of getting shot over. And I think you must know. The answer is obviously not. Getting tackled over? Maybe. Maybe, yeah. Getting arrested over? Yeah, maybe. I don't remember the specifics of this particular gunning down of an American citizen. But if you just view him as that and that alone, and if you're able to forget about his race, and you're able to forget about the media mentioning his race, I don't think, truly, you would agree with his treatment. If that was your uncle, if that was your son, that was your neighbor, that was your buddy, you'd be outraged. You'd want revenge. And you'd be right. And you should want lawful revenge. That's just called justice. Now, did that police officer wind up in prison? Yeah, I think so. But does it keep happening over and over and over again at rates that make it obvious that it's a systematic problem. Yes, of course, and it has been happening since before there were all these cameras everywhere to pick it up. We were being told this by the black community, and then who was telling us to ignore it? Who's been telling us the whole time to ignore our fellow Americans crying out at injustice? Well, hell, it's the very people who go and ignore subpoenas. It's the conservatives do this. What are you conserving when you vote for these people? What are you trying to preserve? I'm not against preserving things that work, but I'm very much against preserving things that do not work. And this clearly, look at it, this clearly does not work. Look at the people off to the side. What would you do if you were one of those people off to the side? Would you run in between the gun and the victim of the shooting? I think they're doing what any decent person should do, the most any decent person can do. They're begging the officers not to shoot this man. You might even find in your own media network, you might even find that in this specific case, there's something you disagree with. And that this guy, for some reason, this guy deserved it. But do you really want to spend all that energy trying to deny the obvious, which is that this happens to black folks more than it happens to white folks? Let's let Ari Melber finish up, because he brings it back to the politicians in a moment, and he makes a good point.
His Trump ally, Lindsey Graham.
I don't know why the gentleman did yield when he was asked to yield.
Now, Graham is a lawyer. He knows it's illegal to use deadly force for noncompliance, for when a gentleman doesn't yield. Indeed, you can only use legal force of a deadly nature under police rules when there's an actual deadly threat. Now, we put this all together for you so you can make up your own mind about what we're seeing and how this relates to where we're headed as a country and whether we need to make some changes, because we can show you Lindsey Graham's response there again to that black American shot in the back within 2 minutes, and it's the opposite of the way he's approached Donald Trump's refusal to yield.
I don't know why the gentleman did yield when he was asked to yield.
If they try to prosecute President Trump for mishandling classified information, they literally will be riots in the street.
Graham conjuring the danger of riots, by the way, as if that lawlessness should somehow slow prosecutors down. He's joined the recent chorus of Trump defenders, and the comparison here is not an exercise. This isn't a rhetorical point. This isn't a meme. This is the actual lived double standard in law enforcement for handling alleged noncompliance. One person indeed appears to walk away, to fail to comply with a law enforcement demand, and within 2 minutes, guns drawn, shot in the back. You're not a threat when you are unarmed, walking away, and shot in the back. Gun down. And the other here blatantly refuses to comply for 3 months. And Trump did more than walk away from law enforcement. He spent months defying their commands, from clashing with the National Archives to daring the DOJ to get the rest of that stuff back, you see here, to hiding the subpoenaed material, which is more serious, by the way, than a command from an officer on the street, finally leading DOJ to get that search warrant and do a peaceful search. And that still drew these selective, hypocritical, conservative howls.
If you are a right-leaning voter and you get the sense that left-leaning voters don't take you very seriously, you're right. And this is the reason why. Because left-leaning voters have a tendency to look at the principle of the thing. And there it is presented on its face. The hypocrisy. The fact that right appealing politicians don't really have principles. Or if they do, they change them as soon as it suits them. And it becomes hard for us to take any argument you make seriously, because we know through lived experience with talking with you, with having family members and sadly former friends that support this stuff, we know that as soon as the next thing happens, those stated principles will change to fit the situation. And the situation always ends up being support the white person, support the person with a job you've been told is what makes them a good person, not the way they behave, but the job they do, the way they earn their paycheck. Be they a billionaire, be they a cop, be they a soldier, it doesn't matter the actions they did. It's the title they have on a piece of paper that ends up mattering to right-wingers. Again, this is from my perspective. And not only do I want to know if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I've missed something. And I'll tell you what, I think in the moment you believe it. I think in the moment you think those are the principles you hold. It's unbelievable to me. It would be if I didn't live it. But it's shocking to me, I suppose, would be a better word, to find that people who seem to believe these things genuinely in the moment then seem to believe the opposite when someone whose side they said they were on violates those principles. And here Ari Melber is doing a great job of showing the principles not being followed as it applies to two different situations with law enforcement. I'm going to let him say a little bit more. We'll talk about this on the other side.
The FBI raid of President Trump is a complete abuse and overreach of its authority.
The way our federal government has gone, it's like what we thought about the Gestapo.
This is absurd. Think about it. This has been a witch hunt for 6 years.
What they've been doing to President Trump is political persecution.
It is Joe Biden's DOJ, and they have weaponized this FBI at every turn.
If you're a Republican conservative and you hear the FBI is going after Trump again, it sounds alarm bells.
What a long way from what we so recently heard earlier. Contrast for Jacob Blake and so many other people who've been in that position with police. This is the comparison. That's why the facts and history undercut this recent supposed outrage on the right about the FBI and police conduct. That's why I mentioned earlier tonight that our nation's equality always faces this stress test in these frontline interactions, because those claims about law and order and obeying police were never intended by those Republicans to be applied to everyone.
And there it is. Those supposed principles were never intended to be applied to everyone. And if you have been supporting these politicians, and for you this was a wake-up call that you were lying to you were being lied to about this, about those principles, I would suggest to you that that this isn't the only thing they lie about. And in fact, in my experience, from my observations of these people, that is everything they say publicly. Literally everything Republican politicians say publicly is self-serving. It has nothing to do with principle. The things they say they believe are not what they believe. And it's not only Republicans. To some degree, it's Democrats as well, but you better believe it is all Republicans And it's not all politicians. And it's certainly not all Democrats. And I would encourage you to look at what the politician is saying and see if you can count the times they contradict themselves. See if you can think critically about it. I think you'll find the lefter you go, the more honest you get, whether you agree with them or not. They're at least being honest about what they think. And that's worth considering. Let's see what you all have to say. The anti-corporatist. Oh, did anyone else catch Tom Hartman on Politics Girl Tuesday? Son of a gun. I didn't. I'm going to look for that. He was doing deep cuts talking about Trump and Russia back to the 90s. Oh, nice. Oh, Rex Track, I think, up there, speaking of, said, I'm so GD tired of everything Trump. I knew what he is/was 35 plus years ago. Good on you, man. Good on you. Meant to ask you about your earlier comment. You said, Rex Track said, as someone who grew up in the Adam 12 era, 70s, I've lost all respect I once had for cops. They've become over-militarized murderers and qualified immunity. Excellent. I wholeheartedly agree, although I'm curious, I don't recognize the phrase Adam 12. I'm now Googling it. It's an LAPD call sign that is a combination of three elements: the unit's patrol division, the type of patrol unit, and the daily assigned reporting. Oh! A show. I gotcha. Gotcha. Noted. I'll have a look at that. The anti-corporatists. I wish I'd have grabbed the timestamp. Oh, I'm going to watch the whole thing. I'm going to fire up Fallout and listen to that as a podcast. Apparently, he has some good books on that kind of stuff. I love Tom Hartman's books. I can't get enough of them. Let's check out that Peace Talks sheet. Ooh. I see some cool stuff. Let's see. Boebert torn to shreds. Oh, yes, this is perfect. This is from our good pal and moderator, Wicked Foxy Dragon. Let me pull this up. I want to check this out. Stand by. I'm going to get it set up. Got a suggestion from Wicked Foxy Dragon here. In the preview, I'm seeing a guy I've been seeing a lot of lately because he's just been killing it. He's been calling out MAGA hypocrisy left and right. I'm less familiar with the guy than I probably should be, given how pleased I've been by his performance. I'll tell you that's going to change. This piece is from Rebel Headquarters, a wonderful show. It's part of the Young Turks. Really recommend watching them. I do know they're a tad litigious with their content and monetization, but that's fine. That's the point of today, is to do as much of this stuff as we can. Let's have a look, and apparently Lauren Boebert is torn to shreds by the man. I'll take a special pleasure in that one.
Oh my God, Mr. Speaker. Let's get real here. Nothing about this is serious. Not the process, not the intentions of the resolution sponsor, not the impeachment case, not a single damn thing.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and Lauren Boebert, the Colorado bowling alley queen, has gotten an earful recently over her...
Okay, side note, big fan of Richard Ojeda as well, and I hope to be majorly retired myself.
idiotic efforts to impeach President Joe Biden, and it's been epic.
One day.
Not only did Colorado's Clanny Oakley get turned inside out by an irate Marge the Trainwreck Green on the House floor this week, she had to endure the humiliation of being torn to shreds by Representative Jim McGovern in front of everyone.
McGovern, okay.
Yesterday, Republicans dishonored this House and dishonored themselves by bringing to the floor a ridiculous censure resolution against Adam Schiff because Donald Trump told them to. And today, they're dishonoring this House and dishonoring themselves by bringing to the floor a ridiculous impeachment referral resolution against Joe Biden because Donald Trump told them to. This body has become a place where extreme, outlandish, and nutty issues get debated passionately, and important ones not at all.
McGovern pulled no punches when it was his turn at bat. He absolutely tore into the Colorado crackpot, pointing out that nothing about Boebert's resolution is serious.
The Republican Party is a joke. They talk about law and order when their front runner for president has been indicted on federal charges. Their first impulse is to impeach him. Our founding fathers must be rolling over in their graves. But they're doing this all so they can distract from the fact that Donald Trump stole top secret information and stored it in his bathroom, showed highly classified Iran attack plans to people, and bragged about stealing classified government documents on live TV.
Yeah, before Richard Ojeda gets after it, wholeheartedly agreed. McGovern nailed it. He nailed it. They are doing this to distract. That is, in my opinion, the purpose of all the Hunter Biden stuff, the purpose of all the committee hearings in the House. It's just to make the January 6th committee hearing look like it was political. When, come on, of course it wasn't. We had an attempted coup. And I've seen the right-wing talking points on this. They're simultaneously, no, it wasn't a coup, and it was an FBI false flag operation. Well, which are you saying? I would love for the right wing to settle on which of those things they believe. Was it just a peaceful protest wherein they trespassed and interrupted the count? Or was it a FBI operation? And I think the reason that there are those conflicting arguments is that there is no tenable case to be made. This was bad. And a great way for us to figure out what exactly happened would be to have a committee hearing on it. And we did. And they reached a pretty darn good conclusion. And if you're concerned that, it wasn't loyalists to this or that were on the committee, well, I'll tell you, it sure looked like Trump organized the thing. So it really wouldn't make sense to have loyalists of the guy that organized the thing on it. But regardless, there were Republicans, as there were Democrats. Famously, there were Republicans on it. And regardless, at the end of the day, no matter who's on it, you have to look at the facts, which I note right-wingers have refused to do. Fox literally played a song on the first day of the committee hearings, a song on their morning show about how you shouldn't watch. You're just going to turn your TV off. Well, the facts of the Republican committee hearings have shown them to be ridiculous. None of the investigations they've launched were fruitful. They were a waste of the American people's resources. They broke the rules where they refused to share the evidence they were talking about with Democrats, even though they were obligated to under the rules. Why is that? Why were they unable to do that? It's a dishonest party, the Republican Party. That's not an insult. That's an assessment. They are dishonest. They're dishonest with you. You voted for them or not, if you're just an American citizen, Republicans, the Republican Party, they lie to you, and they do nothing but lie. And I got a lot of beef with the Democrats because they lie to us too, but they don't do nothing but lie. They lie frankly, very rarely. And when they do, and they're found out for it, they usually get raked over the coals. Usually, but not always, if we're being fair. Let's see what Richard Ojeda has to say.
Jim McGovern brought up the idiotic censure resolution against Adam Schiff and accurately asserted that they did it because Donald Trump told them to do it.
Yes.
Then today he pointed out they're bringing a ridiculous impeachment referral resolution against Joe Biden because Donald Trump told them to. He exposed them as Donald's pawns. Green, on the other hand, was madder than a Georgia Yellow Jacket for a completely different reason. She tore into Boebert on the House floor, accusing her of copying her articles of impeachment and presenting them as her own, basically stealing Marge's thunder. Even the spineless worm Kevin McCarthy said the measure was premature and urged Republicans to oppose it. The Colorado Jacqueline wandered too far out on a limb and is about to come crashing down, and she deserves it. Marge exploded over Boebert's apparent betrayal of trust. She screeched, "I've donated to you, I've defended you, but you've been nothing but a little bitch to me." Boebert could only look on like she'd been caught eating crayons, guilty as hell and as dumb as a damn stump.
I didn't know she was a Marine.
Representative McGovern's assessment was absolutely correct when he told the Speaker that the Republican Party is a joke. They're doing this all so they can distract from the fact that Donald Trump stole top secret information and stored it in his bathroom, showed highly classified Iran attack plans to people, and bragged about stealing classified government documents on live TV. And that is an absolute fact.
No notes for Ojeda there. No notes. Dead on. I'd love to hear a response from someone that does not agree with the content of that video, though. We're going to keep doing this till we get them present and responding. And if you're watching this in the VOD, that's what the comments are for. Don't worry, there's no danger that one or two comments are going to blow up the channel. There's only a danger that we might understand each other a little bit better. So take that gamble, you know? Let's find out what we're thinking. Because I don't believe, when it comes down to it, that you like being lied to. I don't believe that you like being disrespected that often by the people you put in power. I think that does get under your skin, even if you're glad that they make me angry. I think at the same time, it makes you at least a little bit angry that they play games with you like that. We're going to talk about a game Biden played with me in a moment and how I didn't like it. Even if I ultimately agreed with what he accomplished, I didn't like the game he played to get there. But if I'm willing to say that about the guy who I am most likely to vote for in 2024, I'd like you to have the courage to be honest about the fact that you don't like the games your team is playing with you, because they shouldn't be. I'm going to talk about this with the Wicked community now. Join us for the live stream if you want to have a back and forth. Or leave a comment. Anti-corporatist. By the way, Emma Vigeland was on Pim Tool this morning and then called into the Majority Report. Apparently, some of Tim's minions pranked the one guy they had driving her by putting a Ukraine sticker on his car. Interesting. Are more equal. Wow, he looks tired today. I mean, I'm a little bit tired every day, but that's, I just got to face that, it's a tired face. Truth be told, I'm trying to not take the cheap shots that I'm desperate to. I won't lie though. Some of those digs from Richard Ojeda got me. I liked it. Oh. About the only thing... Yes, anti-corporatist accurately predicted exactly what I was thinking about with Biden. Oh, hell, let's talk about it. So, I got to give credit to the anti-corporatists for having the savviness to understand what I was talking about with the sparest of hints. Yeah, I did in the last segment a little tease to say I'm going to talk about something that annoyed me with Biden, even though I ultimately like what he accomplished, and that was the way he accomplished it, because I do think it matters. And it's the sick days for rail workers. If you're not familiar, here it is in a nutshell. Biden was negotiating with rail companies on behalf of unions. And the rail companies were negotiating hard. And if the strike would have gone through, if they would have shut down if the companies would have shut down rail services, if this, that, or the other thing had happened, would have been terrible for the economy. And you know what? Americans would have suffered. It would have been that sort of situation where you don't see it directly, but long term, you know. What was it in The Big Short? If unemployment goes up by 1%, 40,000 Americans die, or something like that. Okay. That's worthy of consideration. And no, I'm not sure those are the exact numbers. I'm just saying there would have been suffering that we wouldn't have seen directly. So, in his desire to avoid that outcome, what did Joe Biden do? He took the sick days off the table in the negotiations with the rail companies, did a temporary agreement, and he promised the rail workers that he wouldn't let it go, that he'd come back to it later. I was hard on him for that at the time, I think. I certainly, if I didn't say it out loud, I shouldn't get credit for having a secret knowledge. I certainly thought it, but if I didn't make a big point of it on the channel, yeah, I didn't like it. Well, what happened recently? He basically got them what they were asking for. He got them more sick days under very reasonable terms. And the issue I have with it, even though I ultimately agree with the outcome, I think the outcome was good. The issue I have with it is that he had to play this goddamn game again. He had to say, just trust me, and I'll take care of this. And the problem with that is that sometimes it's not good to trust these people. And always, we shouldn't have to trust these people. We shouldn't have to do these games with putting faith in our politicians. Faith is for the church, and it's a fine thing there. It's not a politician's place to ask for it. And oh, by the way, in between then and now, the Norfolk Southern crash happened. Largely because of avoidable issues. Yes, there was the issues with the brakes as well, but there was also issues with exhausted employees not doing their jobs correctly because they were overworked. And oh, by the way, there were multiple crashes. And in fact, we've learned these crashes are pretty common, and most often it's a combination of equipment failure and human error. Do I think I have the silver bullet that'll fix it all? No, but the general game playing, where they say I'm going to make a backroom deal, just trust me, is less preferable to me than a president signing an executive order saying enough of this nonsense. I'm going to impose a deal that is favorable to these unions. And if you want to negotiate it, okay, I'll set a time that it will sunset this executive order, because I'm declaring it an emergency, because citing what will happen to the economy if there's this, that, or the other thing. I'd rather see him strong arm a big company than ask yet again regular folks to just trust me. And even if he proves to be trustworthy, hey, good for you, Biden. I mean, genuinely, it's a complisalt. I appreciate what he accomplished. I just don't appreciate the way he went about it, and I think it goes a long way into ensuring that we don't trust politicians. Because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And you're asking us to simply be obedient and passive and to always let the politicians handle things. And we have found that in the long term, they just don't have our best interests in mind. It's like a casino. Even a game that's designed for the player to win 49% of the time, that's just to keep the player playing, because the house wins 51% of the time, and they know that on a long enough time scale, the house ends up making money, and the people end up losing it. And as far as I view it, this negotiation Biden did, that was part of the 49% of the time that's meant to keep us passive. And we're sick of it. Collectively, we're sick of it. We have had the experiences now to see how this works on a long scale. And this thing where he's appeased one group of us after asking for their patience for reasons that will sound perfectly reasonable in the short term, in this specific scenario, it's not enough. Because the principle of the thing is what bugs me. And I know this will be used as an excuse to just demand trust in the future, as though it has been earned. And it hasn't been. It worked out now. I'm glad it worked out now. I'm glad he kept his word. There was no enforcement mechanism beyond an election for him if he didn't keep his word. And the thing of it is, in an election, there's a lot of things to consider. And I don't like giving them that power to decide which groups can I afford to lose to please other groups. I would rather this all be done out in the open. Don't just wear your heart on your sleeve. If you're a politician, I want you to wear your heart, stomach, liver, and colon, all of it, on your sleeve. I want to see everything you're doing, and I want you to act honorably and stop asking us for our trust. A great way for us to trust you more is to stop asking us to trust you at all. And by the way, let's not forget Brother Bernie was also involved in that negotiation. So I assume he was Jiminy cricketing quite a bit. And I thank him as well for his work there. Good call, anti-corporatist, my word. Oh my word. Yes, indeed. The anti-corporatist every day but Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Indeed. Anti-corporatist resisting infrastructure spending shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what drives the economy. I wholeheartedly agree. Yes, Mark's Biz, we are every day but Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Hello, Wireless Mike. Good to see you. Are more equal. MTG is such an idiot. You stole my impeachment. I'm not voting on your impeachment now. Well, then I'm not voting on your impeachment. Fine, fine. I did 2 Southern fines. I apologize. Oh, anti-corporatist. Just because I've been feeling unwell today doesn't mean I missed stuff like that. Laughing my arse off. I'm terminally online. Oh, me too. False buoy. Well done, Mars Falcon. Diana Dean, good to see you. Hey, Jake, I really like your gambling metaphor of the 49% and giving us just enough to keep us passive and leave it to the politician. It's perspective and helpful. Thank you. That's what I'm here for. Are more equal. Democratic stuff has a difficult time passing, but old school Republican stuff never had an issue passing. Yes. That tells you which way Congress was leaning. Even with a Democratic majority, Republican stuff passed 100%. The anti-corporate, it sounds like those old Reese's peanut butter cups commercials. Yeah. Yeah, that's neoliberalism. There was a huge sea change with Reagan. And the interest of business became something that, and God help us, Clinton is very guilty of this as well, became something that was a priority for both political parties, because it was like a sales pitch to the American people, and it really was a sales pitch to politicians. Like, here's a way you can take money from us and sound like you're looking out for the interests of the American people. And yeah, it ends up being big business. Always, always, always. And from that comes further problems. From that comes, we still see problems. We need to blame it on somebody. Well, we're going to have suddenly Democrats saying we're going to get tough on crime, which inevitably means we're going to harass minorities. Oh, did this 15-year-old get caught with a stick of marijuana for the second time? Well, tough on crime. Toss him in prison, mandatory. I don't care how old he is. We're going to try him as an adult. Just ridiculous stuff like that. Really poisonous. But that gives me hope for 2024, because why? Why was Reagan so effective? Why is he still held up as like this sacred politician where even old school Democrats are out there praising him like he was this great guy? Number one, he spoke really nicely. I don't mean he spoke well, I just mean he sounded kind. It was as simple as that, the aesthetic. He sounded kind, he sounded optimistic about America, and Joe Biden does that. Again, it's purely an aesthetic thing, but it was part of it, and it can't be ignored. The other part of it was he won big. The reasons he won big was because it's called a sugar high frequently by people that look at the economy. It's what happens with neoliberalism. It's part of what makes neoliberalism so dangerous. When you're selling out the American people to big business, you do get an initial massive influx of money, because you don't suffer the consequences immediately. When a company cuts 100,000 jobs and doesn't have to pay those employees, that company making further purchases in the U.S., yeah, that boosts the economy. But then eventually you feel the loss from those 100,000 regular folks that no longer have jobs, and that happens down the line. Tom Hartman's book, The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, really charts that out, and it's useful, and I recommend watching it, and or listening to it. Watching it, I guess you could watch it. It's a fine cover, but I recommend listening to it because it charts that out well. And neoliberalism has followed the same 40-year path just around the world. We're at the end of it. So why does that give me? The end of it is not good, for the record. Why does that give me hope? Well, because Biden won in 2020, and he has an opportunity to win big in 2024. And we could have something equivalent to Reagan with that. I mean, yes, the aesthetics, an older politician who is very optimistic, who wins big, especially on their re-election, after healing the country immediately following a financial disaster. Yeah, the aesthetics of it are good. But also, winning that big tends to change what the other political party does, particularly in the U.S. And I stress it so often here for two reasons. One, we should make it happen. We should absolutely make it happen. And two, we shouldn't make the same mistake that we did with Reagan. We should understand it for what it is. And we should know that Biden will have to be pushed. We'll have to learn our lessons from MAGA, too. I dislike MAGA. If you're here, brace yourselves, because I'm going to compliment you and I'm going to insult you a little bit, too. But it's all coming from a place of just being bare bones honest with you, I suppose. I disagree with what basically everything MAGA wants to actually accomplish. But the way that they did it, by grabbing their politicians, metaphorically, by the scruff of the neck and telling them exactly what they want and making a big damn deal about it if they don't get it. Yes, that's the way to handle this. That is the way to go. That is what we should all be doing. That is very effective, and it's frankly the way the United States should work. Now, we got to cut out the nonsense. MAGA, you're going to have to face this. You got some Terrys with you. That's not okay. You can never, I know I get hot under the collar quite a bit, but you cannot threaten violence. But if you filter out that stuff, the core of it, you were right. You've got to make your politicians face you at all times. And you've got to watch them close and get on them when they don't do what you want. That is the correct way to handle things. Zix says, most channels on TV weren't even 24/7. Yeah. Are more equal. Congress can impeach an FBI director or the director of the post office. Now that's interesting. Interesting. Are more equal. The Supreme Court is corrupted right now. We need to impeach them. Yeah, I'm with anti-corporatists. I'm down. If you got a plan for it, I would love it. Anti-corporatist Drax, them, Sklounce. Look, there's a few clips that are entirely on here, but anti-corporatists, you're 100% right. When you have Terrys, the only thing you should do is...
Drax, them, Sklounce.
Never gets old. Oh, Zix, good to see you. All right. Ooh. Let me see this here. Oh, that's only 410. We got one from Wireless Mike I want to check out. This is going to be good. Let me set this up right, John. Oh, and I'm probably just going to let Tom Hartman go off. All right. Introduction time. Let's do it properly, and let's turn off that clip so it doesn't accidentally play at an inopportune moment. Oh, no, there we go. Got a clip from Wireless Mike. Thank you very much for the suggestion. One of my favorites right now, online and in print. Tom Hartman, having a hard look at unfortunately yet another minority group that Texas leaders, Texas lawmakers have gone after. They have apparently eliminated laws that gave a right to vote for disabled folks. Let's have a look.
Greg Abbott down in Texas is getting hysterical. I'm telling you, these Republican governors, they're looking at Armageddon here. You've got half the citizens of this nation, not all women, obviously, but many women in America are just furious with these new restrictions on abortion and all of the consequences that even for women who want to have children. I mean, you know, there's huge, terrible public health consequences to these things. And then on top of that, you know, going into our schools and banning books and firing unionized teachers and trying to you know, interfere in the medical decisions of trans people. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, this is just a list of horribles that have become the Republican Party, all in service of basically, you know, billionaires and white supremacy. And so Abbott, down in Texas, just vetoed a bill, House Bill 3159. It passed both the House and Senate in Texas. It was bipartisan. Legislation doesn't pass in Texas with only Democratic votes. It was co-sponsored by a Republican and a Democrat, Jeff Leach of Plano, a Republican, and John Busey, B-U-C-Y, of Austin, a Democrat. And what this legislation did is it made it possible for people who are blind or paralyzed to vote. to easily vote, to vote online or to mail in their ballots. And Greg Abbott wants it so that you've got to go to a voting station, you've got to show up so that our Proud Boy voter integrity people can challenge you at the polls, and so that you can be forced to stand in line for 3 hours if you live in Houston, you know, or any other blue part of the state.
All right, quick side note, and this is a hell of a long shot. It's not going to happen before 2024, not likely, but we have to, once again, overcome unfair odds and just flat out swamp them in 2024. I mean, everyone you know has got to come out and vote in massive numbers. Very first thing we should do is make sure that this voter intimidation nonsense that the Republicans have been trying to do for so long, that they got a consent decree put on them in the 80s saying that they weren't allowed to do it anymore, and for some reason it was removed in 2018. This has to stop. We cannot let them, for the record, if you're not familiar, what Tom Hartman was referring to there, the reason they don't want you to have mail-in voting is not just because they want to make it difficult. They want to make it physically difficult to drive, you know, get the day off, drive in, and what have you. They also want to post goons outside the polls, people with assault rifles, to give you a hard look and try to get you to either get into an argument with them so they can pretend like you assaulted them even though they're wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying an assault rifle and are not part of the military. And oh, by the way, the military shouldn't frickin' be there in the first place, even if they were, but they're not. They're just terrorists. And try to get you arrested, or, you know, find some excuse to shoot you. That's what they want to do as well. We need to make a federal law that bans such behavior. It's got to happen. Time's come. Second, I need to understand Texas Democrats much better than I do, because I cannot fathom why you would have a Democrat co-sign this. I just can't fathom. Whatever it is they think they're gaining by co-signing this, they are not gaining. They're just not. Not if it's political. If they took a bribe, God help us. They took a bribe, then they took a bribe. But it's obscene to me that anybody would either be dumb enough to think this is a good idea to say is now bipartisan, or that they were corrupt enough to do that. There's better ways to make money than robbing the American people. Admittedly, it's something that you can do if you're pretty low skill and you have no soul. Then all right, it's one of the easiest ways to become a legal con person. I know con man works for men or women, but I can't fathom what the strategy is believed to be there. Wrong, whatever it is.
So that we can discourage you from voting. I mean, this is the bottom line. This is what he's doing. This is what it's all about. This is the fourth year in a row that Republicans and Democrats have tried to pass legislation in Texas making it easier for paralyzed and blind people to vote. And what's really ironic about this is Greg Abbott is paralyzed from the waist down, but that doesn't matter. He still realizes that disabled people are more likely to vote Democratic because the Democratic Party supports the kind of social safety net that catches disabled people and prevents them from falling into poverty or into terrible poverty. And Greg Abbott is like, oh, no, we're not going to do this. We're what, disabled blind people voting? No. They might be Democrats. This is how restrictive it is in Texas right now. You can only vote by mail if you are 65 or older, and that's a principally Republican cohort. You are expecting to give birth 3 weeks before or after Election Day. You have a physical disability, or you're away from the county on Election Day, or you're in jail but otherwise eligible to vote. So he just vetoes the legislation to make it easier for blind people and paralyzed people to vote. This, I'm telling you, the Republicans, they know which way the wind's blowing. This is why they took over, or they set up the takeover of the election systems in Houston. Houston is 1/6 of the population of Texas lives in Houston. Houston is solid blue. And so they're going to make it so that it's going to.
Oh, thank God. Okay. So Greg Abbott, and I'm sure I'm about to read in the comments the people that understood it on the first pass. Thank you ahead of time. So Greg Abbott was vetoing bipartisan legislation that would have made it easier for. Okay. I was really worried for a second there that Texas Democrats were incurably dumb. But no, just to be clear. So they had sponsored bipartisan legislation that would have made it easier. And then Greg Abbott is the one that vetoed it. Okay, this politically is great. This is great. Greg Abbott has done a lot of things which have made Texans rightly furious. And add this to the list, because I do not see, unless you are Nazi, specifically like anti-democracy. I just don't see how this can be viewed as a bad thing, for God's sake. Well, hey, good news is it looks bad for Greg Abbott. Bad news is legislation got vetoed. Maybe at the end here. Maybe at the end Tom Hartman will answer the question. Let's find out. But my question that remains is it still possible to get it passed again? Let's see. As in to overcome the veto.
It's going to be hard to vote in Houston, and it's hard to have the vote counted, and they'll be able to nullify votes that they don't like. You just wait. We will all see this in 2024. This is going to be, Custer's last stand down there. This is the Republicans' Greg Abbott's last stand. Because Texas has the potential to be a swing state.
And that was the very point I was going to make. I love the analogy of Custer's last stand. Yeah. I think that Texas not only could turn blue in 2024, I think we can make that happen. It's unlikely, but the good news is this is one of those fights that will be beneficial to have fought, even if we are ultimately not victorious, because we can exhaust Republican energy and finances by making them fight hard for Texas. Let's put these punks in the Alamo and do a little historical reenactment politically. My thinking is here, it is gettable. Greg Abbott, A.G. Paxton just admitted that he basically had to cheat in order for Texas not to go to Biden. Oh boy. I do wonder if Greg Abbott would be in power if Paxton hadn't interfered with the vote in the way he has admitted to doing. We shall see. But regardless, this is a place we should put a lot of our effort. Partially because if we get Texas, good God almighty, if we get Texas turning blue in 2024, what a statement that will make. What an effect that will have rippling down the line. And it will absolutely cinch a Democratic win. There's a lot of states that are unlikely for Republicans that they have to win in 2024 to get a Republican in the White House. And it doesn't matter if they win any or all of them if they lose Texas. So make a note of that. In addition, a lot of the small dollar donations that Republicans would have received are going to Trump right now, and they're going to corruption. We make fun of Trump all the time, for being a corrupt guy and stealing his folks' money. We make fun of the fact that he's got legal fees right now that he's got to pay for. Well, there is a consequence to that. There's a reason corruption is bad. And here it is. If these folks that gave to Trump said, if a certain percentage of them said, I'm giving $1,000 for 2024, and I'm going all in on Trump, then that's it. They don't have any more to give. And it's not going to their local Texas race. If these folks said, oh God, Trump stole my money, some of them that didn't have, or that did have more to give, but see that Trump was irresponsible with their money, or once again, that scam where Trump charges multiple times, automatically signs people up, and they get gigged twice, and they get angry about that, and they decide they're not going to donate anymore. I'm not saying these things will be common, but these things will happen, and in no point are they going to see what Trump is doing with their money and think, oh, this is what I thought it was. This is what I thought it was going to be spent for. I'm going to give more to Republicans in general. That's not happening. So he's not going to get more people to donate based on how he's spent the money they've already donated. And he is a drain on a portion of their finances. A lot of the big business types, it would appear, are not going to be sponsoring Republicans like they used to, because at this point they're so corrupt, it is bad for big business. They're going to be hurting financially coming up here. And we need to exacerbate that hurt if we care about democracy. And hey, I'm talking to conservatives too. You give a damn about democracy, look at what A.G. Paxton did. He had to throw out votes. He found an excuse to do it, and he did it. And he credits that, makes a convincing case, as a matter of fact, for how Trump won Texas in 2020. So let's exhaust him. Let's make him fight hard for something that was a given, that they hopefully didn't plan on having to fight for. I think that's exciting. And depressing as this is, with their, once again, relying on suppressing of votes, conservatives, once again, it does show that they're afraid. They're afraid. And they're right to be. Because if they don't lose this time, they will certainly lose inevitably. Because we're going to win. Because we're right. Are more equal. They took that ballot to court and got it put back in as soon as a Republican voted. Yeah. Even though it wasn't clear who they voted for and had agreed to that. Jesus. Then they drew names from a hat with no proof that both things in there didn't have the same name. Jesus. They drew one name out, read it, and ran off with the other before anyone could check it. Oh my God, we need to push for ranked choice voting in all elections. I need to understand ranked choice voting better. I hear this a lot. I hear this from lefties a lot. Based on the folks I hear it from, which is folks like you, it tells me that most likely you're correct. But I don't understand why it is better. I don't understand what it accomplishes when actually put into practice. I think I get the basics, but I'm so unfamiliar with ranked choice voting that I really am not sure. I couldn't explain it, so I will be looking into that because I think you might be onto something. Conservatives, says Are More Equal, on TV say suppressing the vote is how they keep things fair. Yeah. Ooh. Are More Equal giving me the ranked choice video to watch. Okay. I'll have called Comparing Wicked Foxy Dragon. It's so your vote isn't wasted when your person loses. Yeah, I guess I mean like the nitty and the gritty. Like I know there's different kinds of ranked choice, and that's where I get lost in the weeds. Like I know there's one where it's like you do a first, second, third choice, and it's got to be a certain amount of people that get. It's very strange. Are more equal. Ranked choice voting in all general elections will remove all power from parties. Okay. The anti-corporatist, it makes it so that voting for a third-party candidate doesn't make you automatically throw away your vote. Interesting. Yeah. I will definitely get educated, but I won't be able to get a full understanding in a way that will be entertaining here, because I usually have to watch something like 2 or 3 times and then go back over the parts I don't understand a bunch. So, but I'll look into it for sure. Probably that'll be tonight's reading. Mark Biz, I need to understand it more as well. Oh, good. I don't feel so bad. It's with are more equal. Okay. Interesting. You guys have some. This is why I've made sure to turn the chat replay on. Ooh, are more equal. We could watch it together and discuss it. Yeah, I mean, I'll probably, after I get a better understanding of just like the nuts and bolts of it, like literally how, like the different types that are available, and I think perhaps more importantly, the arguments for why we don't have them now, whether they're true or not, whether they're honest arguments or not. Yeah, we'll definitely watch one together. I'll certainly watch one with the members, and we'll do a public stream as well, because it's talked about enough that it's talked about enough that it seems to me that it's something that we really ought to get after. Okay. This is too weird not to talk about. Want to talk about it with y'all on this one, but I should probably record. Let me set this up, and we will discuss the Nazis. They're back again, folks. We just can't seem to deal with these punks once and for all. They always pop their snoots into our business in the U.S. Oof, it's a painful one, but at least it's illustrative of the issue right now that I have with the GOP. Oh, if you have heard me say that Moms for Liberty is a criminal group, is a bad group, is a group of ne'er-do-wells, I just want to rely on an old friend for making my point for me.
Well, I sure hope somebody picks up that phone.
Do what?
Because I f***ing called it!
This is The Advocate. Moms for Liberty defends Hitler quote in newsletter before removing it. Okay. Moms for Liberty, a far-right... They'll explain what this is about if you're not familiar. Don't worry, it's coming up. Moms for Liberty, a far-right organization that claims to advocate for parental rights in education, was recently labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which monitors extremism, has apologized prominently for prominently using an Adolf Hitler quote in an Indiana chapter's inaugural newsletter. Now, just in case you're thinking, well, did they accidentally do this thing? And they've accidentally discovered something about themselves. No, from what I saw, it had the full-on dash Adolf Hitler. They very much meant to quote Adolf Hitler. Earlier this week, the Hamilton County chapter of the group shared a revised version of its newsletter, The Parent Brigade, after previously sharing and defending one featuring the Hitler quote the Associated Press reports. We condemn We condemn Adolf Hitler's actions and his dark place in human history, chapter chair Paige Miller, a known scumbag, wrote on the cover of the reworked newsletter. We should not have quoted him in our newsletter and express our deepest apologies. We really want to make clear, I imagine she said, that we simply want to do the things that he advocated for, but we don't want all that baggage. In the newsletter's first edition, Hitler was quoted saying, "He who owns the youth gains the future." The quote appears to have originated from one of Hitler's 1935 rally speeches, but that is uncertain. Now you might be thinking, oh, it's uncertain. It's uncertain. Well, surely then, they didn't know. Surely they didn't know. Oh, look right there. Adolf Hitler. Circled helpfully by Alejandra Caraballo. A Moms for Liberty newsletter quotes Hitler. If you're still wondering why Southern Poverty Law Center labeled them a hate group, well put, Alejandra. After the Indianapolis, again, I've seen this local newspaper a couple of times now. After the Indianapolis Star reported on the quote late Wednesday, Moms for Liberty's local chapter added a context section to its newsletter. The quote from a horrific leader should put parents on alert, the revised version stated. If the government has control over our children today, they control our country's future. We, the people, must be vigilant and protect children from an overreaching government. And I dare say, Those versions were removed by Thursday morning, and the chapter posted in its new newsletter, which replaced Hitler's quote with an apology. Moms for Liberty advocates for things critics say come straight from the Nazi playbook. For example, it advocates for removal of certain books about topics its members deem inappropriate for children. Those topics are the existence of homosexuals. Look, we'll talk about it on the other side. That is too good not to mention. Yeah, they turned around and said, "Oh, we were trying to use it to say that this is a bad thing, that the government's trying to control our youth." But the fact that their behavior is indistinguishable from what the Nazis were doing, the fact that it wasn't clear from their behavior what they were all about, or the fact that they were trying to it's reasonable to argue that what they were saying is we can't let them control our youth, we must control our youth. That's sort of it, isn't it? Because it never comes down to how about, crazy, I know this is going to sound, but how about school as a place where facts are presented and that's that? The far-right argument, in my estimation, is that the wrong propaganda is being pushed on children, and the right propaganda must be. Let me tell you what the left argument is. The left-wing argument is that propaganda shouldn't be pushed on children, and we should make our best attempt, acknowledging that we're going to be imperfect, because we all have our own biases. We should make our best attempt to just teach the truth, because hopefully, all these problems we haven't been able to solve, hopefully one of those kids is going to be sharp enough to solve it one day. And we're going to hamper the odds of that happening if we go on teaching them the same propaganda we kept falling for. Not all facts will make you comfortable, but facts are facts. And Moms for Liberty, according at least to the Southern Poverty Law Center, that's a hate group. And if you're on their newsletter, you're on the newsletter for a hate group. And you should ask yourself, what made you sign up? are more equal. I wonder if you'll get more viewers if you put the chat on your video screen. I know it's unnecessary and screws with aesthetics, but it might help gain viewers. Maybe. Maybe. I'll tell you, I've had a couple of videos that just exploded, and I knew exactly what made them explode, and I could replicate it, and I don't want to do it, because I like the kind of viewers we're getting now, and that's slow. And it's, the thing, though, is it's also steady. And I've set aside enough time in the finances and what have you, despite some humorous setbacks. I've set aside enough time that we can keep building like that. And what I would like to do is keep building like that. It might be a little bit slow for a while now, but it's growing. And I want to keep getting the quality of folks. I like what y'all are like. But, you know, we do need a certain number by 2024 as well. So you're not entirely wrong. I'll say this, if we get too close to 2024 and we don't have a horde of folks ready to rock, then we will. But I want there to be enough anti-corporatists and wireless mics and Wicked Foxy Dragons and Mars Falcons to guide the new kids easily. I prefer are more equal. I prefer a good quality viewership over a massive one too. Yeah, I make no bones about it. I'm very much aping the Majority Report in that regard. That's too good. Zix, we could really use a Goldwater style victory right now. Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Are more equal. Then they took that ballot to court and got it put back. Oh yeah. I read that. That's heartbreaking. Absolutely. All right, folks, I got one more for you that I quite enjoyed. I have not watched this yet because I genuinely don't know what this word means. And I think I know. I think I know. But it's such a weird term, and I hear it all the time. And get ready to salivate, right-wingers. It's a criticism of certain kinds of lefties. Which, if you're on the left, the reason I will always advocate for being nitpicky little nerds about this stuff is because I think this is what keeps us from becoming the bad guys. If you accept that most people had the best of intentions when they went down a dark road, then you must also accept that it's possible for you and me both to do it. So we should acknowledge what's wrong on the left and where the weakness is. And just like how you wrestle with your buddies when you're little to find out where your weaknesses are, that's ultimately the purpose of it. That's what we're doing here. What are tankies? I don't know. Going in, let me tell you what I think they are, because I hear this term all the time, but I only get it in the context of people throwing accusations at each other. And I've never heard somebody be a self-proclaimed tanky. Maybe such a thing exists, but I haven't heard it, which means it's hard to really understand it unless you do a deep dive. Well, somebody did a deep dive, and rather than me do the work, let's have them do the work. Let's watch it on Peace Talks together. Find out what a tanky is. But I'll tell you what I think they are going in, and we can see how accurate it is. My understanding is a tanky refers to somebody that likes the idea of communism, but doesn't really understand what it is, and also thinks that Soviets were communists, not understanding that they were communists in the same way that the Nazis were national socialists, where they've just taken the word without the actual practices, and their version of that thing they said they were is quite actually dark and a bad representative. So that, the reason they're called tankies, whenever anything has a Russian aesthetic or the backings of the ex-Soviets, the Russians, they say, send in the tanks. Go get them. I'm supporting them. I don't think that's right. Let's find out. what I think it is, but I think I'm wrong, in other words.
Come join us over on The Deprogram, a podcast I run with Second Thought and Yugopnik.
To quote our favorite authoritarian GT, have these gentlemen ever seen these nuts?
Intro topics, history, memes, and me being perpetually tired. All of it is at your disposal. A recent episode titled Tanky Discourse. Go check it out. Alright, let's get into it. Tanky is a term you hear thrown around a lot, but it seemingly doesn't have any meaning. The quick summary is it doesn't really. Well, it kinda does, but the intention behind its use is generally nebulous, and the term is expanded so much as to be meaningless.
Okay. So I instantly feel better. I feel better for not really understanding what it means. Alright, good. But let's find out what it's supposed to mean then.
The origins of the term. Originally, tanky was a term that originated in the British left wing for those that supported the Soviet intervention in Hungary. The intervention is a huge topic in and of itself, so take a look at the history of the working class movement in Hungary for a deeper dive. TLDR, it's far more complicated than libertarian socialist uprising or complete fascist takeover. Regardless, neither that Hungarian Republic nor the USSR are with us today, so why is the term still used? What people mean. Nowadays, the term tanky is mostly used by people, some which claiming to be leftist while others clearly not, to refer derogatorily to... Well, here's where it gets a little more complicated. There are a few targets. Number 1, in the narrowest possible definition, tankies are those that are more or less partial to the experiences and lessons of former socialist as well as current socialist examples, as well as their leaders, for example the USSR, Cuba, Vietnam, etc. Number 2, slightly broader, a tanky is anyone who defends or more commonly simply clarifies misconceptions around former socialisms. A tanky also usually presents a nuanced understanding of why certain actions were taken, which some interpret as running defense for some.
I don't want to insist upon ignorance, but one of my favorite things is to demand somebody be sent to the gulag. I just think it is a very funny thing to say. So I will probably, unless this video does a hell of a good job of telling me why I shouldn't, I probably will demand people get sent to the gulag. Not even fully grasping the historicity of that. Flawed presenter, folks, but at least I let you know well in advance.
Things supposedly inexcusable. Number 3, broader still, as a catch-all term for Marxist-Leninists and adjacent ideologies, which usually encapsulates support for the concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat, democratic centralism, the active suppression of the bourgeoisie, a more involved approach towards internal security, economic planning, etc. This also usually...
Am I a tanky? I might be a little tanky.
Follows the condemnation of the use of force in times when it was possible that it was warranted. This links well with the general link with authoritarianism, which we'll touch on soon. Anti-imperialism, and by extension anti-Americanism too, fits here, so I'll mention it. Number 4, much more commonly, tanky is a lazy term used to demonize people to the left of the one using the term, generally intended to dismiss and ostracize said people without engaging or offering a counter-argument. This particular usage case is most common with liberals who adopt a radical lib approach without any theoretically derived radical content besides engagement in electoral politics and an allegiance to American exceptionalism. A derived term, although even more nebulous, is red fascist, usually just shortened to red fash, but we're not going to touch on that today. And number 5, finally, the caricature. A person that doesn't exist with opinions that no one really holds, but it's used for soy Wojak memes as the internet usually does. It's supposed to mean someone who uncritically supports everything a socialist nation does. These people don't exist. The USSR or China or Stalin did nothing wrong is a meme set online as a joke. No one actually believes it. Like,
a lot of folks. Let me give you the guy whose videos I just demand be out of my circulation because I have no patience for him. Hassan Abi. Dude had a hammer and sickle as a flag proudly hanging up behind him. Why? Because he didn't know the difference between Soviets and the concept of communism, and he was only paying an aesthetic tribute to these things, not realizing that for a lot of folks that's like having a swastika hanging up proudly while you're saying, I'm a socialist, see? And you could have known that about him well in advance just looking at it. And surprise, surprise, when Russia invaded Ukraine, what did he do? Hassan Abi or Hassan Piker. Where am I getting Abi from? Anyway, Hassan Piker frickin' came down, my understanding is, on the side of the Ruskies. And it's because he is that guy. I'm sorry. I know this person is the person educating me, but I must disagree here. There are folks that think that are that shallow about it. And they're a real danger, because you can be shallow and charismatic, which Hassan Piker is, and that gets folks killed. It gets people killed. So to that point, sir, I respectfully disagree. I don't think there is nobody like that. However, I do suspect that 999 out of 1,000 times that accusation is leveled, it's an exaggeration.
Likewise, seeing someone saying something on Twitter and interpreting that opinion as representative of the entire movement is silly. In my personal experience, you won't ever see a more critical and nuanced view of, for example, the USSR, than from someone who has actually taken the effort to properly study that system, usually a well-read Marxist-Leninist. We have a dedicated episode on that topic here. What's the point? More or less, it's a commonality of politics to invent derogatory terms for those that you disagree with. This example is no different. In almost all use cases I've seen, it's used exclusively online by mostly radlibs and other quasi-liberal types to dismiss an argument or person without engaging with the content itself. I remember anarchists, ANCOMs and the like using it plenty before, but that usage has died down over the past several years, from what I've seen. Regardless, a good point to note is that if we're using the term against people who recognize the achievements of former socialisms and adhere to more or less orthodox theoretical approaches to socialism, meaning Marxist-Leninist ones, then this term is a little more than, hopefully, an unintentional condemnation of third world or imperial periphery leftists. The vast majority, dare I say all actually influential Marxist thinkers of the 20th century, fit the tanky label if applied uniformly. Even more so when looking at post-independence, anti-colonial, and anti-imperialist, read Black and Brown, figures. The vast majority of active leftists globally, the ones agitating for socialism, are people who identify with Marxism and Leninism or an adjacent offshoot, who recognize and respect the lessons of former socialist experiments, are usually part of Marxist-Leninist parties, and uphold figures that symbolize the revolutionary socialist movement. In essence, the vast majority of the global left would be tanky in that case. What does that say about the so-called non-tanky Western left, though? Isn't it at least a little infantilizing and Eurocentric to consider that only the West has it right, meanwhile the vast majority of historic as well as modern revolutionary leftists had it entirely wrong? Likewise, the term seems to apply selectively. Those with incredibly similar beliefs and approaches may get the label on them or not, usually based on the level of demonization in common anti-communist American media, or based on how much that particular individual likes said figure. Concretely, Sankara and Castro aren't too different from Kim Il-sung or Honecker. On authority. Another point usually tied in.
This is likely the last section we're going to watch. And I'll tell you why, if it ends up being that. Because it sounds like it's a dying term, and why take the time to study it if it's going to go away anyway? I just wanted to know, because I've seen it recently a couple of times. Might have just been some old heads that like still say groovy, like me.
Into tanky discourse is the idea of authority or authoritarianism. Before getting into it, the term is also incredibly nebulous. Between dictionaries and various quote-unquote respectable encyclopedias, you get several incredibly broad or contradictory definitions. As with totalitarianism, it's more of an invented political term, used in attempts by, particularly American academia, to lump fascism with socialism. This is further strengthened by the fact that the same yardstick can parallel, for example, the US very well, or even better than the intended nation that label is being placed upon, yet it's rarely done. Typical government versus regime language in an attempt to more subtly shape what you think. For the liberals in the crowd, name something you dislike about authoritarian socialist governments, and a government model you look up to or believe is viable to reform has most likely done the same at some point to differing extents. I would actually say the prime liberal democratic example, the United States, has done far worse on almost every account, but they're always spared the term or the criticism. A fairly decent read I'd recommend on this topic is Human Rights in the Soviet Union by Albert Szymanski. Likewise, to anarchist listeners, every prior example anarchists uphold had exclusive access to and use of arms, had labor discipline, an internal security apparatus, a system of prisons which included political prisoners, a hierarchical bureaucracy, exclusive control of sources of media, conscription, I could go on. It seems the only successful socialist attempts at building something tangible gets this authoritarian label thrown on it, likewise with this tanky business. The anarchist examples were commendable, but in the end failed fairly early on and in a way that spares them that criticism. My point is, the methods before, during, and after a revolution will always be categorized according to authoritarian means, and hence pretending that revolution, the violent overthrow of one class by another, and the forceful establishment of some form of proletarian rule, be it a state or democratic federated workers' councils, as not authoritarian is just silly. If your issue is less the means and more with the degree of community control, well, this is a question of theory.
Yeah. I think that's enough. So, in summation, what is a tanky? Nebulous term. It's a way to rag on somebody that is you're acknowledging at least is on the left, but you think is not on the left the right way. Okay. It seems like in terms of how it's actually used, that's what it comes down to. Cool. Question answered. Useless term. Vosh uses it a lot, or at least used to use it a lot. I haven't heard him use it lately. It would appear that's why it doesn't really mean anything anymore. What does it mean overall? What can we learn from this, generally speaking? Be critical of catchphrases you hear. If somebody cannot explain what they are saying in simple, understandable terms, it's probably because they are either unable to explain it at all, they're unable to understand it themselves, or they're nervous about being honest about what it really is. This includes, by the way, for overly academic terms. If somebody is only ever rattling off a series of academic terms, even if they're using the terms correctly, which they rarely are, but even if they are using them correctly, that's just another grift. It's because they want you to believe that they know what they're talking about, but they don't want you to know what they're talking about. And that's a problem. So if you see somebody calling somebody else a tanky, ask them to rephrase. That's what I would recommend. And the reason is not to get people to stop criticizing the left from the left. It is to get them to criticize the left well. Because criticism, believe it or not, I believe, I should say, but believe it or not, I am convinced that criticism on the left is a strength. And I think that Reagan's 11th commandment really was a big part of what destroyed the U.S. Conservative movement. Their inability to criticize each other, the taboo of doing that, turned them into MAGA. And I do believe it's time for some drastic, far-left reform in the United States. And if we're going to be doing that, well, damn it, we better do it right. So criticize, but criticize well. And if somebody calls somebody else a tanky, ask them to use a term that has a common understanding, because this one doesn't. Let's see what you all have to say. Obsessive audio. No one knows what tanky means anymore. Yeah, okay, good. Good. Wicked Foxy Dragon. I wonder what it means by have the capacity to consume. Don't we all have the capacity to consume? Shouldn't it be one who actually does consume? That's a good point. Is everyone watching Wagner in Rostov? Ooh. Interesting. Is that live right now? Whoa. Okay, so I was aware of the of this. Let me give y'all. Oh my God, this is pretty neat. We're doing another, folks. We're doing a bonus. Good call. Who said that? That caught me off guard. Who said that? Stuart Brooks. Thank you very much for that. We're going to do a bonus section right now. Thank you very much. I'm going to do the intros, so if you don't know what's going on, don't worry, you will in a moment. Got a recommendation from Stuart Brooks here saying we should check in with the Wagner Group. If you're not familiar, the old Ruskies have hired a group of military contractors called the Wagner Group. They are not good people, but they're in conflict with folks that I very much disagree with. You see, what happened was while fighting on for the Russians, apparently they took a bombardment from Russian forces. And as a result of that, wow. As a result of that, sorry, I'm just catching up here. They have said they are marching on Russia. Essentially, that's my understanding. I may be incorrect, but the AP will correct me if that is so. So we're going to watch a piece here and now by the AP. This could be a massive change in the war in Ukraine. This could be huge. The Wagner Group was doing a lot of the worst dirty work for Russia, and apparently getting sick of being treated like disposable, or the most disposable soldiers. If they are now turning their forces against Russia, you know, much like how electorally we're planning on draining, or I'm advocating for draining GOP resources by making them fight hard for Texas. This could do the same thing with Russia suddenly having to fight to defend itself from its own hired mercenaries. My word. Let's have a look.
Нести без боеприпасов потери в Бахмуте бесполезные и неоправданные. Мои парни не будут.
Whoa.
Входим в тыловые районы. Да, сказали, будем выходить потихоньку. Ну что, парни, все? Через 10-15...
После того, как мы передали фланги, то произошло не тактическое отступление. Поэтому товарищ Коношенков, мягко говоря, слукавил. Произошло просто бегство подразделений Министерства обороны с флангов.
Сегодня пополудня в 12 часов полностью был взят Бахмут.
That is interesting. All right, we're going to do a follow-up, and I already see... Oof. Tell you what. Do you want... And let me know in the comments here. Do you want to hear Ukraine war based on lies, which is frankly true, but it's being told from a former ally of Russia, as in this might get to the Russian people? Do you want to hear that from Reuters, which is a straight news organization, or do you want to hear commentary oh God, Vosh, no, or do you want to hear commentary from Bo of the Fifth Column? It's going to be a little bit more sober, but it's going to be an assessment from somebody who has a let's be real here, a very good understanding of how militaries function. Tell me in the comments. You will dictate where this goes. It's a choose your own adventure. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Stuart Brooks, Prigozhin is trying to pull a Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Are more equal. Basically, we didn't get much from that 50 seconds of footage other than saying he said he entered into Russia and experienced no resistance, and that does not surprise me. So what do you guys think? Bo of the Fifth Column or Reuters? Let me know. Probably first person to rattle something off is going to get it. I go Bo every time, says Wireless Mike. Well, you got good taste. Rabin, good to see you. Tough to make these when at work. Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what, we're doing Bo of the Fifth Column.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's
Howdy,
Bo
Bo.
again. So today we are going to talk about what's happening in Russia. We're going to talk about what's confirmed, what's reported, what's possible, what's likely, where it goes from here, if anywhere.
This was the correct call. Well done. Ooh boy. I'll tell you, the only thing that I know for sure is that it ain't good for Putin, which means it's great for the rest of the world. But let's listen to what degree.
We'll talk about whether or not we're going to be watching Swan Lake really soon. Okay, and I've referenced that in the past, and every time I get questions. If there is a surprising change of leadership in Russia, oftentimes Swan Lake will be played over the TVs. It's kind of a tradition there. Okay, so what's going on? The reporting suggests that Russian troops, military troops, traditional military, launched a strike that hit Wagner. Okay, Wagner is their private, the private forces. Wagner is understandably upset about this. They believe it to be intentional. Okay? What we know is that Wagner troops got hit. Okay? Do we know that it was the Russian military? Not really. That hasn't really been confirmed yet.
I would say it makes no sense. No sense at all for that to be intentional. But I do want to point out here and now, before we go much farther into this, this is what happens when you have a corrupt military. And heads up, this is the path the United States is on. With the amount of unchecked military spending we have, this is what it's leading to. The way, God help us, the way Russia's military is nowadays. When they're unchecked, the military leaders feel that they have leeway to get away with things, and they will try to use that to better their own positions. And I'm not even suggesting that I know it's this, that, or the other thing. It's the uncertainty that is so dangerous here. It's where their their private military contractors, their mercenaries, could reasonably believe that they were targeted. That's the kind of environment they're fighting in right now, and that has led to, apparently, this. Wagner turning around and marching to Russia. That also, by the way, gives me a little hint of how strong Wagner thinks Russia is. That they could do this and live. I don't think this is a death march. I have so many questions that are cropping up. Let's just let Bo go.
But it also doesn't matter because Wagner believes that's who it was.
Yeah, there you go.
There has been a lot of tension between Wagner and the traditional military. It is coming to a boil. The boss of Wagner made some statements that some might interpret as an open call to arms, and indicated his desire to punish the leadership of the conventional military. The FSB, Russia's internal security, has reportedly started a criminal probe into the statements of the boss of Wagner, because that, if true, they're like way out of line. Okay, so all of this pretty well confirmed. This is stuff that has occurred. Whether or not the interpretations of the people on the ground are accurate doesn't really matter. That's the lay of the land at the moment. There are reports of troop movements. Some of the reports are pretty significant numbers. I don't necessarily believe the upper end of those numbers, but if these reports are accurate,
that's the upper end.
The movements could certainly be interpreted as Wagner making a move against the traditional, conventional Russian military leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Again, possible, kind of likely, scale up for debate, but not 100% confirmed at time of filming. There is also reporting suggesting that major buildings within Russia that are important for the continued governing of the country by the people currently in power have had some increased security.
Okay, context. Remember, we talked about why Russia actually was invading Ukraine. Like, why Ukraine and not Poland? Why Ukraine and not yada yada, Lithuania? Why, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ukraine borders Russia, and Russia's capital is very close to that border. So Wagner crosses over from Ukraine into Russia. They are automatically, by default, close to the capital. Hence, what you're hearing right now. Also interesting that Bo is saying they're going after, or it sounds like they might be, there's a lot of qualifiers there, but targeting Russian leadership. I don't think Wagner has any illusions about defeating the entire Russian military, of which they are a small part. But as I said in the beginning, how they understand how, or have a better understanding, or at least believe they have a better understanding of how Russia is weak, or would have some sort of plan. That's revealing to us now what that weakness is. The Russian leadership. How interesting. So, it would appear things aren't exactly stable on the home front. Can't stress enough, this is somebody in a believed to be safe void, very far away from these things, who has not been fighting over there. I don't really know. I'm just gathering the pieces of information we have about this, but they are all fascinating.
It's reported, not confirmed. I know people are going to say, well, we've seen these clips. I haven't had time to verify that those are now. This, given everything else, this is possible, likely even. Okay. I will have a link to a video down below. I can't remember how long ago it was, but less than 60 days ago, that might provide a little bit of context to this. So, that's what's going on. Does this mean that you should be popping your popcorn to get ready to watch Swan Lake? No, not necessarily. This could resolve itself relatively quickly. It could resolve itself without major issue even. This is something that theoretically could be handled via back channel pressure and phone calls. Will it? No clue. But that's a possible outcome. It is also possible that it completely spirals out of control. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's not time to pop your popcorn for Swan Lake. But if you wanted to watch the ballerinas warm up, you might want to pop your popcorn for that, because that's kind of what's going on right now. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Oh, the prop at the end got me. Ha-cha-cha. Well, I think I know one of the topics we're going to be talking about on Salty Saturday, where we just enjoy something salty and laugh at the bad guys. Ooh, that's, I don't know the severity of this. I'm right there with Bo here. I can't even pretend to know how this is gonna go. I do know none of it's anything but bad news for Putin, which means it's great news for the rest of the world. Stuart Brooks. Stuart Brooks. I want Wagner to release Trump's P tapes. I love it. Anti-corporatists. Either Wagner or Ukraine or allied forces need to take down Fancy Bear. Gonna lay down for a bit, not feeling well. Oh, hope you feel better soon, anti-corporatist. Wireless mic, LMAO. Yes, indeed. Oh, delighted. Are more equal. Russian Civil War. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Ooh, obsessive audio. Wagner has a lot of recently extracted prisoners in its ranks. How interesting. And yes, thank you, anti-corporatist. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Although I gotta say, good Lord, looks like you have. Love it. And we got a new member. Oh boy. Well, thank you so much and welcome. Obsessive audio. Prigozhin entered Russia and the highway between where he is and Moscow, 600 miles away, has been closed. Military vehicles and Citadel protocol in Moscow. Wow. B.O. Wagner's people are mostly untrained prisoners. Fair enough. But truly, just how it looks from a propaganda point of view is good. Mars Falcon, Prigozhin wants to spank someone. Yes, indeed. Obsessive audio, Prigozhin has been trying to undermine the Russian national military for some time now. It looks like he's successful. If his goal was undermining, they are undermined. And yes, Putin does look very weak right now. That's absolutely. Oh, well, folks, that was a wonderful way to wrap up this stream. We are going to wrap it up. Tomorrow is Salty Saturday. We are not going to worry about being productive. We're just going to enjoy being salty about this stuff. I hope to see you there. And this has been WYCD Wicket. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.